Yes, I only spent $400 for an entire week living as a digital nomad in Bali. Now, Bali is known as the ultimate digital nomad hotspot, a place where people come to work remotely, chase that dream work-life balance, and live cheaply under the sun. But as I came to Bali, I've actually wanted to test this out. How cheap is it really? And more importantly, is Bali actually worth it for remote workers or digital nomads like us? Well, in this video, I'm breaking down exactly how much I spent in a week. From food, accommodation, and transport to all those little extras that actually sneak up on you. Now, be sure to watch until the end of the video because I'll be showing you my total cost breakdown on how I achieved $400 in a week and calculating how much is it right for you to be spending in Bali. So, without further ado, let's get started. Before we get into the numbers, let me just say this. Bali can be cheap or expensive as you make it. If you want to live like a local, you can go eat warung food, rent a scooter, or share the villa. You can easily live by on a very tight budget. But if you're doing the whole digital nomad fantasy, for example, like daily flat whites for cappuccino, co-working membership, weekend getaways in Uluwatu for surf or Ubud for meditation, those little things can really add up fast. So here's what I actually spent category by category. Now let's start with the biggest one, the accommodation. I stayed in a 2-bedroom villa with 4 of my friends having twin beds, which includes a pool, a Wi-Fi, and also an AC in each room. They also have a kitchen and also all the accessories of a kitchen equipment set so that I can cook foods instead of buying one. That cost me about $361 living in Sese, which is a further part in the Canggu area. And a fun fact is that we actually negotiated this price from $481 and we got a pretty good discount, which was roughly 25%. So since I mentioned that in this villa we're living 4 persons, so per person I actually spent $90.25. Now, don't get me wrong, this villa was not a villa that I would probably rent monthly. Now, if you want to rent long-term, you'll always save a ton, which means weekly or nightly stays always come with a tourist markup. Now, if you're really smart, you'll always want to negotiate, and that's one of the big keywords here. What I've noticed during my 1-week stay in Bali was that areas like Canggu, Ubud, Seminyak, and even Uluwatu have gotten pricier since last 10 years ago. Although it's a very famous place where everybody likes to commune and stay within those areas, my recommendation is that I would actually look for places around that area like Sese, where I'm currently staying at, Prerenan, Dalung, and even Sanur. You can always find these places in platforms like Airbnb and also a local platforms which I use, which is ticket.com, because the prices make sense and they don't really mark up a lot, which you guys can even get a good deal. And one tip that I will always like to share is that always prepare in advance because a matter of 10 minutes can really make a significant differences. So if you're planning to go to Bali, I think a month before that, try to make your bookings so that you can also find hidden gems and a good spot to live with the very comfortable prices. And don't try to look up for places in booking.coms or even Agoda because they really mark up the prices. And in my experiences using Agoda for quite some times, they always have some payment getaway. That means if you make a purchase and it's successful, I don't think the owner of the villa has received that payment yet, and you might need to even cancel your bookings in the last second, which could pretty much get very hectic. And a fun thing, this might not be promoting a lot of platforms out there, is that you could always call the local owner based on the places that you found in Agoda or even Booking or even Airbnb. That's you skipping the middle services and they don't really share the phone number information. But if you look into Google Maps, you'll actually try to find some accommodations nearby that exactly look the same. So try to go to the Google Map, try searching it manually, and you might even save yourself a pretty good deal. So yeah, that's like a fun tip to really keep in your pockets when you're actually looking for places. All right, the next thing we want to talk about is food. This is where most digital nomads actually save their money or completely throw their money out of their pocket. If you're really on a tight budget, I would probably say live like a local. You can go to warungs that actually offer you $1 to actually $3 per meal, like fried rice called nasi campur, mie goreng, which is fried noodles, or even ayam betutu, which is one of Bali traditional cuisine. But if you're hopping from cafe to cafe, ordering smoothie bowls, coffees, and avocado toast, expect to actually spend $10 to $15 per meal easily. During my 1-week stay in Sese, I personally mix both local food for lunch lunch, cafes for work sessions, where I spent around $5 to $10 in a day. So if you multiply that by 7, that's probably $70 in a week. And my tip for food is that I would always highly recommend for you to use platforms like Gojek here. This is so that you can actually get a very good discount if you order in a group, which means if you're with your friend trying to eat in the villa, try to use that platform. If you're using Gojek, you would probably need to have a local Indonesian number, but an alternative to that platform is actually Grab. If you have a phone number within your own country, you can actually download the app and start ordering food right away. And I think it's quite famous for a lot of foreigners in Bali. However, when comparing both of these platforms, Gojek and Grab, I found that Gojek is much more cheaper with 5 to even 10% price discount. And another tip for me when you're actually having dinner is that I would highly recommend for you to actually go with your bike or even scooter to the nearest local store or even food store. Now, don't be lazy, and even though it's a 15-20 minutes bike ride, which can actually save you a lot, you can get pretty much a lot of options, as the local store basically in Bali, they like to line up from one another, and you can find like chicken barbecue called sate ayam and a lot of other food variety options. So yeah, those 5 to 10 minutes to even 20 minutes ride can actually saves you up within $5 each and every day, and times that by 7, you can actually save $35, which you can use it for another weekend getaway, probably in Uluwatu or even in Ubud. And speaking about getaways, the next category I want to talk about is scooters or bike rentals. I rented a bike with approximately $39 in a week, and fuel was barely upon $10 to even $12, but it's mostly on the $10 side. So if I were to say, it's probably around $49 to even $50, which I spent on bike rentals and also the fuel. Now, the price here on bike rentals may vary because I'm a local from Jakarta that is testing this digital nomads moving into Bali. So I can speak the local language here called Bahasa, and I can always negotiate the price, right? Since the owner of the bike rental and me are both locals. It's going to be tricky and also a little bit hard if you're a foreigner, because they can actually mark up the price knowing that you're coming into Indonesia, especially in Bali, because that's where they get a lot of their profit from. So my recommendation is that when you're actually looking up or bike rentals in Google, try to search it in an Indonesian language. So terms like sewa motor Bali murah in Google is actually a good keywords to actually use, and tons of local bike rentals in Bali might show up. And use a VPN so that you can actually get better deal. And although you don't understand the Indonesian local language, you can use stuff like ChatGPT to help you translate and also negotiate the price. And don't forget, although they might actually mark up, the reason is that they actually include an insurance in their bike rentals, because there has been a lot of cases in Bali where these foreigners, what we locally call them as bule, they like to actually damage the bike. They can either not contact the bike rentals and return the bike themselves, they can give it back in a very bad condition, and they might even leave the bike in some random area, telling that they don't know where they put their bike the last time they saw it. So yeah, although it's helpful to negotiate the price, do understand that you're actually helping the locals here in Bali for their business to work and this Indonesian economy to grow steadily. That might be a little bit too much on what I'm saying. But yeah, my top tip is that if you have an Indonesian friend, try to go to your Indonesian friend and tell them to help you rent a bike, which you would always find a pretty good deal. So yeah, make friends as you're a digital nomads. Don't just hang around with other digital nomads from outside of the countries. Having a few local friends will actually help you around along the way. So with that, I would probably say a safe budget to spend on a monthly scooter, bike, or even transportation is around $80 to even $100 in a month. Now, the next category is living in Bali. Now, Bali isn't just about working. The reason you're coming to Bali is that you actually want to live your dream life. It's not just about working in an apartment, going to your local store, and just being isolated in the city. It's about commuting, it's about traveling, making friends, networking, and a lot of other fun stuff. I spent around $162 on leisure and also entertainment activities. Things like sunset drinks with friends, spa treatment when your body is feeling a little bit too tired, and also crafting key rings. You see this ring that I've just made in Ubud? Yeah, that's part of the leisure activities. The funny thing about Bali is that the experience can be rather super cheap or very tourist experience based, which is pretty expensive. You can serve for $3 or pay $50 for a yoga retreat, which is we're living in the same island but a totally different worlds. And that's the magic of Bali. You can actually live your dream life or you can live in a tight budget. The choice is actually yours. When we're talking about living, it's actually a good point to talk about gym. For fitness, I only stayed here for a week and I didn't actually join any weekly pass or any day passes, as my point to come here was to live like a digital nomad, to work and also make content. For gyms, you can actually live in both worlds, right? You're gonna live on the high end, go to gym like Obsidian Bali, Wrong Fitness fitness gym. Those things can actually cost around $60 to even $250 per month for a membership. Yes, the best thing about those kind of gyms is that you'll actually meet a lot of high client networking people. And if you want a luxury lifestyle, go ahead and do that. But you can actually get a cheaper one if you go to the local gym like Bull Gym in Canggu or even Genggong Gym in Ubud. Those types of gym really cost you like $15 to even $30 in a month. I can't say the exact prices because it might actually vary and how you depend to negotiate whether they have a promo in this month or a different promo in the next month. Those local gyms are still solid in my equipments. They get the job done and you actually want to get your heart pumping and be fit, right? One of my good tips here in Bali is that this gym, which I've talked to my friend about as he's a gym rat, he said that most of these gyms have intro passes. That means you actually need to use them to your advantage. Go and take that intro passes and you might actually get a 1 week for free or even 2 weeks for free. And honestly, between walking, swimming, surfing, and scootering everywhere, Bali kind of keeps you in that active default. So you'll probably be losing calories as the day goes by if you're not just staying in your villa as an introvert and working. And then the next thing I want to talk about is groceries. Groceries were around $20 per week, which I spent on. This is mostly for snack, drinks, and breakfast stuff. Don't get me wrong, imported goods are expensive. Think like almond milk, cereal, protein bars, or even protein ice cream. But local produce is super affordable. And my advice for you is that if you're living on a very tight budget, shop at local supermarkets like Tiara Gatsu for fruit, veggies, for your breakfast, scrambled eggs, or even at dinner. I would highly recommend when you're buying groceries, buy for the food on breakfast if you're actually a morning person and likes to eat breakfast. For me, I usually skip it. I only buy the groceries when it actually comes to dinner meal. For lunch, I would always recommend you to go out there, have a fast internet speed in a cafe, network with people, also order your food there. And that's probably the best thing about Bali is that everywhere is so close. So yeah, for groceries, I only spent on dinner, and lunch, I usually eat outside. And you're probably thinking about, hey, what about health insurance, right? So that's probably the next thing we're going to talk about is travel insurance. Since I'm a local myself, I don't really use travel insurance since I'm moving from Jakarta to Bali, but I totally get it if you're a foreigner and you're trying to come to Bali, whether you're from the Europe, the US, or even Australia. And this is one of the most boring things to spend on, but it's actually very crucial because you might not know if you're having a Bali belly or even you're having a little accident. I think one of my friends from Australia was having a scooter accident just the other day, and this is where it can get really handy. I'd say a good travel insurance plan actually costs around $10 to $15 on average in a month. It's one of those things that you'll probably never use, hopefully not, but if something happens, it actually becomes priceless and you can be very grateful for it. I would highly recommend for you to actually check insurance such as Safety Wing, Heymondo, or even World Nomad. They're popular among digital nomads. I've talked to some people about it and that's what they use also. They usually offer flexible, short-term coverage at a very good rate. And yes, especially if you're renting scooters, make sure your insurance actually covers motorbike accidents. And that's pretty much about travel insurance. A lot of people skip on this part of the category when traveling, but I couldn't stress this a lot more because you could be paying thousands of dollars if something goes wrong, and hopefully nothing goes wrong during your stay in Bali as a digital nomad. And finally, the extras, which is the last categories I actually want to talk about. The extras is what I call about those little prices that actually sneak up on you. Things like clothes, if you're tempted to buy clothes for your stay here. Short grab, if your bike is not working or you left your bike somewhere else. Souvenirs, random cafe treats. Those are little prices that actually spike up during your stay in Bali. And for that, in a week, I spent roughly $50 on this very little extra. Like the clothes that I'm wearing here, that is actually the clothes that I actually got from Ubud. So it's pretty fancy and it does the job, right? It's pretty cool as you can see. So a good tip when you're actually buying clothes here is that avoid Western stores. Local market like this clothes over here, they actually really have a good price. And a very good trick when you're trying to negotiate with the local shop owner is that try to always say 75% discount of what they're saying. So if they're saying, hey, this clothes is for $30, try to say that, hey, I want to get it for $10. And they would probably say, nah, that's too much. And a good fun trick that I usually apply in the rules of negotiating is just walk away slowly though. I want you to walk away step by step, and after 5 seconds, look back. They'll probably tell, okay, come here, get this clothes for $10 as you requested, something like that. But if you're actually buying local clothes from a store, meaning they actually have a good brick and mortar store, the price is already set, so you can't really negotiate the price there. They're a good price between $10 to even $20, but I assure you those are actually quite in a good quality, so you don't really have any trust issues. So if I were you coming as a digital nomad in Bali, I would probably say save $100 to even $150 in a month for this little extra. Well, let's do the math. Here's how everything adds up to the week. Like I mentioned before, accommodation, I spent $90.25. I'm living here with 4 of my friends, and per person, that's the total cost. For food and coffee, it's roughly around $70 in a week. So for transportation, the total cost is $49, as the scooter ride was actually $49 in a week, plus fuel around $10, which brings the total cost to $49. And leisure and activities is actually where I spent a lot of my money on, which total cost is around $162 in a week. I spent things like on sunset, on drinks, on spa treatment, and crafting key rings. For gym and health, I actually didn't spend anything on it. I just went for a morning run. For groceries, I only spent about $20, and that's only for breakfast or for evening meals. And then finally, for shopping and extras, I spent approximately $50, including clothes, parking tickets, souvenirs, and probably treat my friend along the way for some drinks. That brings my total cost to $441.25 living in Bali as a digital nomad in a week. Now, if I were to times that by 4, it's approximately $1,700, which is quite expensive if I were to live with this same kind of lifestyle in a month. Thankfully, it's just a week. And to be honest, this might be on the high-end stuff and not very cheaply if I were to be living as a local. I think a lot of local, if you're an Indonesian watching this video, you guys would probably criticize me as I'm that bougie. But no, this experiment was supposed to be living like a foreigner coming to Indonesia without the travel insurance and without hitting the gym. But yeah, that's roughly about it. Now, let's put that into perspective. Like I said before, what is actually considered to be on a very tight budget, on a moderate budget, and actually a very healthy budget? For the lifestyle, living in a tight budget, I would probably say $250 to $350 in a month. You will need to eat local food every day, share a villa or even a guest hotel, and you might need to walk and spend quite a few steps here and there and rent a scooter. But if you're living moderately in Bali, $400 to actually $600 is quite enough. This is a mix of cafes and eating local foods too, with a good local gyms alternative and a few activities just running along the beach. No need to be all fancy and stuff going to beach club. And you can probably live there with $400 to $600 in a month. But if you're actually having a healthy budget, I would probably say $750 to even $1,200 is very, very affordable. You can probably live like a king here. You can have your own private villa, your own co-working space. You can actually go to cafes, eat, enjoy the sunset, go to Ubud or Uluwatu for a surf, and basically enjoy what Bali has to offer. And a very comfortable living that I see a lot of foreigners here that is staying for months to months in Bali is that a safe margin to actually have is $2,000 in a month. So if you have that kind of money, you come to Bali, I trust you, my friend, your life as a digital nomad will be living the dream life in Bali. So yeah, that is basically everything in this video. A quick recap on the tip is rent monthly, not weekly, on accommodation and even scooter ride. You can actually save 20 to 40% discount. Eat local when you can. The food here is amazing. No need to eat Western foods. I think the reason why you're coming here is actually to try Bali cuisine, not the Western food. But if you miss your homeland so much, there's actually lots of Western food like Mexican, American food, or even Italian food. And use cash, as a lot of this local store, they don't actually have card. But so yeah, keep cash handy at all times, or you can actually use Revolut or Wise card so that you don't actually need to get charged for their conversion fee. And get a local SIM card. That is very important when you're traveling to Bali, so you can download apps like Gojek and you can save prices on food with 10 to even 15 price discount. And please do not fall for the Instagram Bali trap. It's very easy for you to want to boast about your digital nomad lifestyle for people or your friends outside of Bali, but that can really drain your money fast. So please, I actually want you to take care of what you can afford to spend, not what you can afford to show other people what you can spend on. Bali can either drain your wallet or fund your freedom. It depends on how intentional you are. Speaking about this under the sun actually makes me want to jump into the pool and drink some more water. I'm sorry if I'm speaking too slowly or maybe a bit too tired. I've actually had a pretty long week, but I'm trying to get this content good for you guys. So yeah, that is basically everything you need to know about my total cost breakdown living in Bali as a digital nomad. You saw how good it was, you saw how cheap it was, you probably got some tips and tricks along the way as I'm talking in this video. And living here isn't just about spending less. Now that's not my point. It's about spending smart. I don't want you to splurge on things that you wouldn't actually spend spend on if you're living outside Bali, I want you to plan your activities and living as a digital nomad in Bali right. You can find that balance between partying, surfing under the sun, and actually working. And that's the best part about Bali. It's called living, working, and having freedom at the same time. And I think that's one of the hidden gems of what Bali has to offer to you living as a digital nomad here. If you found this breakdown helpful, if you found my tips helpful, I would really appreciate it if you write under the comments. If you were to come to Bali, what will be the first thing that you will splurge your money on? Whether it be spas, whether it be surfing, whether it be partying, let me know in the comments. I actually want to engage with you. And if you want more content like this where I actually break down my total cost on what I spent in different cities, working remotely, or even as a digital nomad, please like, comment, and also subscribe in this video. That would really encourage me and help me to keep making more content like this so that it can actually be useful and actually helpful. This is it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll always see you in the next week video. Goodbye.
No.